as we go forward, then in 2008, obviously, the big buzzword is cloud. Everybody has got cloud fever in 2008. And there are substantial and important themes here around cloud computing that I want to come back to. When we look forward then, what we are trying to do here at VMware is look forward to what I see as a big fundamental change that is rolling through our computer industry. And it's all about balancing and synthesizing a better experience out of these three forces. We are moving fundamentally away from a device-centric world to a world that is application, information, and people-centric. We're all about how do we take infrastructure and treat that infrastructure as a common substrate on which we can build experiences that allow services to be provisioned ultimately to users in a much more flexible way without having to redo the underlying infrastructure, and allow us to gang together all the elements of that underlying infrastructure to increasingly think of that infrastructure as a single giant computer on which applications and services can be fundamentally provisioned in a more manageable, scalable, and an extensible way. What we are responding to is basically the following needs. On the one hand, we see our current corporate IT customers under a mandate, particularly in these economic climate, to use the underlying compute resources they have in a fundamentally more efficient and flexible way, to be able to start behaving internally like a hosting provider or like an internal cloud, or reaching for the self-service data center, or reaching for utility computing, or reaching for autonomic computing. They're all phrases that mean the same thing. How do I take my collection of infrastructure resources and increasingly see them as a single giant computer on which I can provision flexibly both today's application loads and tomorrow's application loads? And we'll work our way through this. The next thing is, how do you look outside and realize that there are increasing numbers of people who are building compute resources in their data centers, in their publicly accessible data centers? How do you take advantage of that? How do you think about that as part of your strategy? And our vCloud initiative speaks to this, that will come through. There's tremendous discussion in the industry today about the cloud. And we believe that the key point here is not an either and, not do you do it all internally or do you drop everything and try and do everything externally. It's really all about flexibility and federation. So the needs to look at the cloud are real. All of you are being asked, as I said, to do things more quickly, to do them more cost effectively. You need to look very hard at whether you want to carry capital expense on your books or have the capital expense carried on someone else's books. So there is a tremendous interest and a genuine need to look at what could be done with off-premise computing resources, but it comes with real problems. Generally, these external clouds are not compatible with what we find inside the enterprise environment today. A lot of their infrastructures, the way that they've approached things, require you to essentially write new applications. And on top of that, they're all different. So how do you make the decision, basically, which guy you're going to use? Are you getting locked into them? Do you have to rewrite your application, etc.? We think we can use the techniques that we're using to basically isolate application loads from underlying infrastructure inside the data center and apply those basic approaches to the cloud as well. So we are working on an initiative that we call the vCloud initiative, which starts with that extended definition of an application load that I talked about earlier. The virtual appliance going to the virtual application, or VApp standard, that allows you as a IT organization to understand when you've got your application loads in a form that is well described, isolated enough, well-formed enough to be able to hand that to someone else and have them run it in their infrastructure. Conversely, it is a set of standards and a vocabulary that will allow cloud vendors to speak to you in terms of what kind of application loads they can accept and run in their environment. And the hope is here, and the intent is here, that that will allow IT organizations and cloud operators to be able to talk in meaningful terms to each other. And it doesn't become an either-or situation. It becomes a situation where you can make flexible decisions about which parts of your application loads you want to run internally or externally, and change your mind as the time goes by. And clearly, we've received a tremendous amount of interest in this area. We have over 100 cloud operators who've signed on to be part of this vCloud initiative, including some very big names like Verizon and British Telecom and SunGard and Savvis and T-Systems, etc. So they will be working with us to be able to articulate to you what kind of services that they can provide to you, and conversely, you can understand how to get yourself and your applications into a position to be able to take advantage of that. In summary then, our focus is on these three key dimensions: responding to allow our IT customers to become increasingly cloud-like in terms of their internal operations. That's not means that you throw everything out and you jump into the cloud. It means that you use your infrastructure more efficiently, you can provision your applications much more flexibly, and start to behave internally more like a cloud operator hosting provider. We'll allow you to federate that with people who can offer you external resources through the external cloud.